A ramp is a form of vertical circulation that anyone can use, whether they use a wheelchair, whether they have weak muscles caused by some illness, whether they use a walker or push a stroller. Everyone can use a ramp. And a ramp is any slope that's greater than 1 in 20, which means for a 1-foot rise, a 20-foot run. If you go 1 divided by 20, you get 0.05, which is 5%. So 1 in 20 is the same as a 5% slope. Next time we're going to talk about the ADA and accessibility. ADA is part of many building codes. But for now, let's just look at what the code says about slope. And if you have a ramp, it cannot be any steeper than 1 in 12, although that's awfully steep. So look at these 4 ramps here. The one at the top is a 5% slope. The one at the bottom is a 1 in 12 slope. Look how much steeper that is. And now imagine being someone using a wheelchair, trying to push those wheels. It's hard work. The length of the run depends on the slope. So looking at the bottom ramp here, if you have a 12% slope, you're only allowed to do that for 10 feet of run because, as we mentioned, that's hard work and you can't force someone in a wheelchair to keep doing that for a long distance. However, if you have a 5% slope, that's you can accommodate that in a wheelchair, and so a 5% slope is allowed to be any distance, and then in between are intermediate requirements. Now, there are some exceptions. Sometimes you have a place where you just need to make a little short adjustment, usually with some retrofitting some existing structure thingy. If you're rising no more than 3 inches, you're allowed to have a slope of 1 in 8. Well, if you think about that, a 3-inch rise with 8 times the run means the run is 24 inches. So you could have a little short rampy thing that was 3 inches high and 24 inches long. A person in a chair could get up over that with a little effort. But no matter what your problem is, you're not allowed to have a slope steeper than 1 in 8. The cross slope means the side-to-side slope, and you can't have more than any steeper than 1 in 50. And no matter what the slope is, and no matter what the run is, you can't rise any more than 30 inches in height in any one section of ramp without putting a landing in there. Side to side, the ramp has to be at least 36 inches in between the railings, and that's to accommodate wheelchairs. You have to have landings, that is, a flat place where someone can rest. You have to have landings at the top and at the bottom of every ramp. The landing has to be at least 60 inches wide and 60 inches deep. And if you think about what you know about wheelchairs, that's to accommodate someone making a turn in a wheelchair. If the ramp changes direction, you have to have at least a 60 by 60 landing. And depending on the slope, you might have to have a landing every, like if the slope is over 5%, you need a landing every 200 feet of run. Now, handrails. And think about who's using these ramps. It's not just spunky young athletes, it's also people using wheelchairs and walkers and recovering from illness and so forth. So we need handrails. And the code says if you've got one of those short ramps that's allowed to be 1 in 12, you have to have handrails on both sides, period. If you have a ramp with a run more than 72 inches or 6 feet long, you have to have handrails on both sides. And in a commercial setting, if your ramp has more than 6 inches of rise, you have to have handrails on both sides. Handrails on ramps and stairs have to be between 34 inches and 38 inches high. And we've talked about the difference between residential and commercial. If you're putting a ramp on a house, remember that, let me see, can we look at our picture of slopes? There's a slope. So if you're going up a certain height, you need a long distance to be able to make that slope flat enough. So looking at our porch here, when you have a front door or a door and you're trying to put a ramp on it, ramps work better when the height is 30 inches or less because you need a lot of space to accommodate that horizontal run. And think about who's using these ramps and what it's like to roll or walk up something sloping. We need to use a finish that's got friction on it, a slip-resistant friction. And for preserving our house, we need to slope it a little bit so that water drains away from the foundation, at least a 2% slope. And next time, we're going to talk about accessibility and the requirements of ADA, and I'll show you a flyer that talks about installing a ramp.